and welcome to Voices of Victory podcast show. I am your host, Mario De Leone, and today is kind of like a new format, completely new format, new technology. We're going to take a quick moment to just dive right in to communication as it relates to relationships. What you're about to hear can actually provide you with a great deal of clarity. Here's what I want to share with you. If you are in a relationship or maybe dating perhaps, and you value communication, like on a scale of 1 to 10, if communication is a 10 to you, then I want you to know and understand that ghosting and coldness is a form of communication. And with that in mind, if you value communication at a very high level, they're choosing disconnection over honesty. Now, that being said, if you value that communication, if you value real communication, don't invest in people who can't even try, make an effort, or even try to communicate. The thing is, if you understand the idea that communication is what bridges the connection, and you're not a dentist, you're not here to pull communication teeth, like to get people to talk. It's like, oh, let me get people to talk. You could ask really good, solid questions that provoke good, solid answers. But if they're not interested in answering those questions, they may be, evasive, trying to evade every question that you ask. Now, you have to understand, you're not a dentist. If you have to always pull teeth to bridge that gap with somebody, then you should really reconsider. You should really reconsider whether or not you want to invest any more time in that connection. That's the overall arching point that I want to make. Because you choose growth, and that other person should also choose growth. And what tends to happen is you might want to work so hard to shift that other person, to change that other person, to encourage that other person, right? But it falls into being a communication dentist, that you're constantly have to pull teeth. So if you're constantly pulling teeth for any growth or communication, move on. Reconsider. If you value communication on a very high level and you're just not getting that, you're putting in the effort, you want someone who's going to grow with you, grow alongside with you. Now, with that being said, avoid downward spiraling into guilt of any kind. Did I do too much? Did I say something wrong, right? You might fall into the mental idea of, well, I don't want to argue. Why not? Because I'm going to rock the boat and I could lose that person. Here's what you want to understand, is that conflict is a natural part of relationships. And should you avoid conflict in your relationships, then you're avoiding the growth of that relationship. Because conflict is when two people can actually come to an understanding together. You can work it out and come to an understanding. There's going to be relationships that maybe you've gotten yourself into, or it just happened that way, where communication feels like dentistry. So don't spiral into guilt. Don't spiral into guilt. Okay? Their inability to connect is not a reflection of your worth. It's what we call a value mismatch. A value mismatch means you value communication and maybe they're very disconnected from communication. They don't value it the same way. So you can't see that as a flaw in yourself. If you start to see that as a flaw in yourself, you're going to beat yourself up. You're going to beat yourself up. Part of the communication is emotional maturity. So when we see people that are like ghosting, it does speak on choosing disconnection over growth. That disconnection is more important. They don't value the relationship enough to stay connected with you. So when it comes to emotional maturity, there's usually no excuses. When you are getting to know somebody and they're emotionally mature, then there's no excuses. They're going to make time to communicate, they're going to make efforts, they want to grow with you. It's very important. So you can honor the connection without excusing harmful behavior, right? Very important. Because if you're making constant excuses for them, oh, they're overwhelmed, they're insecure, they're busy, what happens is you keep nurturing neglect. You keep nurturing something that they're not investing in. That comes down to values. Relationship is literally based on values. So, what I want to bring to the table is that you have to choose alignment with real values. What does that mean? Non-superficial values. This is not whether or not you both like the same Netflix show. Okay, this is consistent communication even during tough times. There's emotional responsibility. There's no major blaming and pushing of buttons, blaming and disappearing. Okay, you'll know somebody who's blaming all the time when their first word in their statement is you. You did this. You didn't take the garbage. You. So what happens is that tells us that their communication that they have, they don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to point out what you did without sounding blamatory. That's really the best way I can put it. Blamatory. This is not about being performative, like suddenly you're getting to know somebody or you're in a relationship or you're connected to them and it's all about your performance, being performative. Because that's what happens is people fall into that performative mindset. And if you're constantly falling in that performative mindset, and what happens is you're going to feel like you're losing your worth and losing your value as a friend or as a connection with that person. So you kind of have to release and reframe. You have to release the person, the other person, release them. It doesn't have to be revengeful, and it doesn't have to have bitterness. It can be without bitterness. It can be without that way. Not everyone is meant to stay. Some were just like a chapter and not the whole book. And quite honestly, there may be a big, massive insight that you learned about yourself. Because relationships are very much like a workout machine. Very much like a workout machine. And you get better at them. First of all, you get better at them, and then you also learn what your standards are, what your own standards of a relationship are. For every bad relationship you have, there's a standard that's buried underneath that says, I've been through hell, I've been through that problem, this is my standard now. I'm no longer willing to accept X, right? And it goes back to the point that I brought up on this channel is that how do you know what love is? You first figure out what love is not. How do you know what a good relationship is? You first figure out what a bad relationship is. And what happens is your level of quality and standard for a relationship goes up with every relationship that you have. That's what's important. So ask yourself, are you chasing avoidance? Are you chasing avoidance? Are you chasing a connection with somebody who chooses to not grow with you? Because quite honestly, it's all about growth. It's about growing together. And there may be people that are not interested in growing together. So you have to be able to see that. It's about writing that new chapter that aligns with your standards, not your wounds, not your pain, right? Not your story. And that is a very big point. So if you value connection, then consider my words. If you value communication, then consider my words. If you value false blame, let go of it. If you can stand in emotional maturity, please do so. If you can align with values and not fantasy, please do so. If you could release and let go of the things that are not aligning with you, please do so. It's about peace and accountability, because some people say, oh, protect your peace. Peace is great, but you also have, in relationships, there's also accountability as well. So they go hand in hand. You have to be able to keep your peace, but not at the expense of losing your accountability. Accountability is your part. It's your part. You're not always responsible for the other person. It's your part, the part that you want to preserve. Your effort, your peace in this world, your peace in that relationship, your contribution, if you will. So there you have it. So just want to recap in the end of this video. Communication is a value. Let go of any personal blame. Avoid the word you in every statement. Emotional maturity equals no excuses. Align with real values. Relationships is all about value matching. If you value communication and they don't, and they're not investing in the relationship, think of it this way, two people are trying to keep something alive. That third relationship is almost like a living entity, and two people are trying to keep that alive. And if one person doesn't wish to keep it alive, then you become the IV drip that tries to keep it alive. And quite honestly, you're going to become exhausted with that. It's going to become exhausting, and you don't want to be in an exhausting relationship, because you're going to feel burnt out. So it's about aligning with your values, not the superficial Netflix values. It's about releasing and reframing it. Reframing is taking that old belief and transforming it into a new productive belief. So release and reframe. Okay, you can let go and you can pivot on and move forward. Sometimes losing that person is creating a massive amount of new space for something that has higher value, but you're so caught up in the drama that you don't see it at that time. So that's it for today. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video.